Hello and welcome to another Jay's Politics Blog podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach us at podcast99.org or me directly at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at jpolypodcast. This is another episode. This is episode 5 of This Week in U.S. Politics, where I discuss politics that affect people from across the country as well as locally here in Washington or wherever you may be at. So please contact me at my email or on Twitter and ask me to cover a topic in your state or your area. One such topic that is actually hitting the news here in Washington State is actually is about a lady who shot a man and killed him in a road rage incident on I-5, just south of Seattle, between Seattle and Tacoma. That topic is actually been kind of hit today hard with it being published in the Olympian and the Tacoma News Tribune about this lady who shot a man who was being aggressive towards her. And also for those of you that were watching at the very beginning, or if you're watching this on YouTube, sorry about the mess over my shoulder here. Normally I have my camera angle better, but I forgot to adjust it today. Anyways, back to the point at hand. If you read the article, and I'm going to kind of go over it a little bit here. The lady was on a motorcycle. She was being boxed in by a man who did not like the way she was riding her motorcycle. As a motorcyclist myself, even though I haven't owned one or ridden one in quite a while, I still keep my endorsement just on the chance that I will have the opportunity to buy a motorcycle again. I always look at the springtime, this time of year, as when people aren't paying attention for motorcyclists because they haven't been dealing with them as much, especially during the winter when it was cold, snowy, and icy. With that said, that does not mean that motorcyclists can get away with doing anything and everything they can and want to out on the road either. We all share the road. That is the point we need to stress and understand. We all have to share the road. Drivers of vehicles, we have to be looking out, especially in the sunnier weather, what people are out on the road, what people are out there, such as motorcyclists on either two-wheeled motorcycles or the three-wheelers, the trikes, or the front-end Can-Am Spider-style motorcycles. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because of the fact that our area here in Olympia, Washington, is full of people who seem to think that anybody who owns a gun or possesses a gun, whether it's for protection or not, is a person who is a Nazi, conservative, homophobic. The list goes on. Basically, they're the social justice warriors out there. I try not to lump people into that category, but that is all I have dealt with today at work when people ask me if I've seen the paper, and I said, which one? And they're like, the News Tribune or the Olympian. And I'm like, which article are you referring to? And they're like, the motorcycle one. They haven't read the article. All they have seen is the actual headline. And I'm going to read that to you here, and I will pause for a bit of a reaction from you. Okay, maybe I won't pause for a reaction, but still. Take a moment, pause it, read it yourself, and try and see what they're saying. Now, this is on the Olympian.com webpage, and I'll show that here. Under the crime section, and this was, again, the front page today of the Olympian and the News Tribune. No charges for woman who fatally shot I-5 driver during a road rage incident, prosecutors say. Let that sink in for a moment. No charges for a woman who fatally shot an I-5 driver during a road rage incident, prosecutors say. That headline right there has people outraged that I have dealt with today. I was planning on covering other things, the McCabe firing or Donald Trump agreeing to go to North Korea, things like that. But I felt this needed to be brought up today. Going on to the article, a woman who fatally shot a man on the shoulder of Interstate 5 during a road rage incident last month will not be charged, the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office said Friday. The 23-year-old woman acted in self-defense, the prosecutor said. The News Tribune has chosen not to publish her name because she was never arrested or charged with a crime. Most people haven't even gotten to that point of this article yet. She was never charged, and she was never arrested for it. What more do I need to say? Anyways, witnesses said the man, 60-year-old Bruce W. Jones, was upset with how the woman was driving her motorcycle February 18th in the southbound freeway near King-Pierce County line in Milton. He tried to box the woman in with his 2016 GMC Terrain, then got out of his vehicle and aggressively approached her on the shoulder of Interstate 5, the prosecutor said in the news release. The release gave this account. Jones started a fight with the woman, and at some point, she head-butted him. Jones then slammed the woman's head into the Jersey barrier and took her to the ground. As Jones tried to climb on top of her, she shot him in the chest with a handgun. He died at the scene. The motorcyclist, who had a concealed pistol license, called 911 and waited for investigators. Jones's wife was the passenger in the GMC and was not injured. This is another reminder to everyone to keep a cool head on our roads, Prosecutor Mark Lindquist said. Nothing good is going to come from physically confronting another driver. The investigation of the shooting caused a significant backup on the freeway as police closed down 2 lanes of I-5 for about 4 hours. That's the news release. Here's the, as you're reading this, it's like, how can you not understand why there are going to be no charges on this? She acted in self-defense. If I can't defend myself and I have to, by my hands, if I headbutt somebody and they don't go down and I get tackled to the ground, if I have a concealed weapon, I'm going to use it. It's just like anybody else should. Um, it just, I don't know, it just boggles my mind how people don't see this as for what it is. They just see no charges in a road rage incident where somebody was shot and killed. They don't bother to get the sides of the story. They just assume the person who shot somebody was mad at the other person. They assume that they were ticked off at the other person. Well, I am sorry. If you read the news report, if you read what the prosecutor's office said, and I'm sure if you go and look up the police report, you're going to find out that this was all started by the man being upset over somebody else's driving. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a perfect angel when I drive. I get mad at people for driving stupidly on the road, and I'm sure people get mad at me for my driving on the road. But it doesn't mean that we assault each other. It doesn't mean that we lose our cool and then get out of our cars, especially on a freeway. Are you nuts getting out of your car on a freeway? Now, with all this said, I do want to express my condolences to the wife of the man who did die on the road. Imagine seeing that in the mirror or even turning around and looking when you hear the gunshot go off and knowing that your husband's, dying. You know, I don't even I would not want to have my wife experience that. I would not want to experience that if it was my wife being shot. That's difficult as it is. But at the same time, we have to own up to our own responsibility, our own actions. We can't say, "Oh, well, she was driving aggressively, so he just reacted to that." That's no excuse to go and physically attack somebody. Now, if he cut her off and caused an accident, I could understand. Or if she cut him off and caused an accident, sorry. If she on her motorcycle cut him off and caused an actual accident, I totally understand why he would be upset. But if there was no accident involved, then why harass her about it? Why get into an altercation with her over it? It's just, I don't know. People just don't seem to understand that there are no people don't seem to understand that there are consequences to their own actions. And that people who read news headlines and don't who don't go in further on the story, they just see, they just see it when they're walking by in a paper stand or a newspaper box, like outside restaurants and things like that. They don't read the story. They just see the headline and they're like, "Oh my goodness." And that's what I was dealing with at work today. People asking me, "Have I seen the newspaper?" and what basically what my opinion is. And I'm like, "I haven't read the article completely, but from what I have read, I understand why the prosecutors are not pressing charges." And they're like, "Well, why? What justification could they give you that, you know, that somebody dying is okay?" And I'm like, "Because it was self-defense." They're like, "Well, you just don't know the whole story." I'm like, "Have you read the article?" "No." "Well, sorry. I have read the article, as at least as much as I could on the front page of the paper. There was still more to go on." But they just people like that just it's I don't understand why you jump to conclusions so quickly. Why any of us jump to conclusions so quickly on something without reading the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, and that's the rest of the story. Thanks, Mom, by the way, for making me listen to that Paul Harvey when we were in the car. What a great storyteller Paul Harvey is. Another thing that I wanted to touch upon today, and I know this is going a little quicker than I usually do. It's Saturday night. Normally, what happens Friday night on another channel is happening tonight at 9, so or 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. But I just trying to get this done, give my commentary, and not also try and speed things along because pushing an hour every time is getting a little ridiculous. Also, I want to try and streamline it a little bit better to see how much content I really need and get ready for the internet radio side of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. So I'm looking forward to that. Which means I also need to bring up the fact that I am unfortunately not broadcasting on the internet radio right now because I have some sound issues with the way that I'm doing things. Um, I haven't quite worked it out. I'm going to try and do a few test streams here tomorrow and Monday before I go to work. But basically, it involves the fact that I have a ground isolation that I need to find in my system, and it could just be an electrical signal coming in from my laptop or from my soundboard. But until I try to figure it out, I've got some of it taken care of, but I've got to try one more thing. I'm waiting for that to come in the mail. So, anyways, what I really wanted to move on to is that on Pi Day this week, March 14th, one of the greatest scientists we have ever known, one that has battled through a lot in his life, passed away. I'm, of course, talking about Stephen Hawking, brilliant mathematician. Again, ironically or serendipitously, however you want to put it, passed away in the early morning of March 14th, or Pi Day. For those of you that don't get the mathematical reference of pi, pi, 3.14. As a matter of fact, I made a comment about how on March 14th, 2013, the way we do dates here in the United States, month, month, day, year, it was a palindrome, 31413. I thought it was pretty cool then. So, anyways, Stephen Hawking was a brilliant man. Unfortunately, struck down with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. The man brought so much to this world, even though he couldn't actually speak. He had to use a voice synthesizer, a speech synthesizer. And it takes months for them to prep for an interview. It takes months for him to prep for a speaking engagement of any sort, or I should say it did. Um, but the fact that he still persevered, being paralyzed and basically trapped in his own mind, allowed him to think of things that we don't that most of us can even fathom to understand. Hawking radiation, things like that. Um, to me, that is just, that's just torture. To to not be able to express things the way you used to express things. Growing up throughout your life, being able to walk, run, laugh, shake hands, nod your head up and down, um, shake your head side to side, and then all of a sudden being diagnosed with something that takes away first your ability to walk, and then your ability to move mostly, then your ability to talk, to know the point basically where you only have control over your eyes. And that's if you ever see up close on his glasses, you see a little sensor right down here that was checking where his eye was looking. Basically, almost my understanding, I could be completely wrong on this, but basically the software written for him is basically early heads up display and allowed him to select words to form sentences. And then it allowed him to select those sentences later as part of an interview, as part of a way um, to do that. Like if, just as an example, um, say I was to interview him about the gravitational effects of a black hole, and I sent in my list of questions, but I didn't know exactly which order I was going to ask them in. They would prep all the answers, and then he could use his eyes to select through. And when they're ready, I'll be like, okay, I know you don't have time to change this, but here's the order of my questions, just so that way I can give him politely the way to know where his answers were, so he could go and find them. And even though I have not followed what I have seen from him, what I what I look at what I gained from him myself is that no matter what life deals you, whether you are an atheist like he is, whether you are a believer of a faith, Christianity, Islam, or anything, he showed us how to survive. He showed us how to move on in the face of adversity. He showed us how to live, basically. That life is too short, too precious for us to be bogged down by the little things that prevent us. And for those of you on the podcast, I'm air quoting prevent here, but that prevent us from moving forward in our life on something. Um, you know, I went back to school after my time in the Navy and figuring out, I like computers, I like programs. I'm going to start studying how to be a software engineer. I completed my associates in there, and I hadn't done anything since that point. Had a lot of events come up in my life, and I like no, but I still need to get a degree. So what else do I like doing? I like talking. I like presenting information. I'll be I'm going to school now for public relations. My Bachelor of Arts in Communication, focusing on public relations. With that said, my goal is still to go back and get my bachelor's in software engineering. My focus is going to be going back and actually working on um, mastering some of the skills that I lack in that. Some higher level math, some higher level sciences. So that way, if worst comes to worst, I can go back on that and be like, hey, I'm going to go work for Microsoft or I'm going to go work for Apple or whatever. And if they don't need programmers, I can always say, hey, look, I also have a degree in PR. I can come and help do this. PR is not just, the public relations side of things. It's also, can help out with the marketing side of things. It can help out with, taking user feedback and correlating it and being able to speak the software engineer's language would help them be able to maybe make better products, just things like that. But it's through the life of something like Stephen Hawking where you see him just sitting there giving an interview or presenting a TV show, and you're like, well, if he can do something noteworthy, something worthwhile, why can't I? Why can't any of us? People oftentimes see people in, wheelchairs and have pity or have empathy on them. And there are people out there that are like, "No, don't feel sorry for me. I just have learned to adapt. I've learned to move on." And then there are those people that just sink into the self-doubt, the self-pity of themselves, like, "Oh, woe is me. I can't be, the person I was gonna be," you know? And we have to just move on. We have to learn to persevere, and that's what I'm trying to get at here with the bringing up of Stephen Hawking. And I know it's not political, but we have to learn to look at our life as being short, being finite. We're not gonna live forever. Basically, once we've gone through our puberty and our maturing stage, we're breaking down at that point. We're getting old. We're becoming obsolete, so to speak. Parts of our body aren't functioning the way they used to. Lord knows mine is. My metabolism doesn't work like it used to when I was, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, all that when I was more active than I am now. I can change that. I can help with that. I need to do that. That's, you know, and I see it in myself and I just come up and I admit I come up with excuses, but I'm far better off than some people who don't see a way out of things. I'm far better off than some people that don't see that even though they are disabled or debilitated by a condition, that they feel that they can't lead a successful or have a positive impact in the community, whether local level or worldwide, such as Stephen Hawking. I just We just have to learn to accept what life has done, learn to accept what we have been given in the way of life, and learn to work from that. Learn to move forward with that. So that's kind of where I'm going with that topic. Um, looks like I have a looks like I have a little bit of extra time. Um, let's see here. Wasn't exactly expecting to be able to have time with that. Uh, I just don't. Yeah, I'm not gonna touch on the Andrew McCabe stuff or anything like that. I think we'll save that for next week. Um, although that was what I wanted to talk about, it's not the important thing right now. So let's see. Let's go up. Let's just take a quick look at the politics here in Washington State. I know you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but politics. All right. Okay. Here's here's a couple things that I think we could talk about. Oh, something a little bit more, um, a little bit more controversial here. Sorry, I'm gonna pull this up and share my screen again. And I have not even looked at my live chat yet. Holy cow! What a bad host I am. Oh, come on, chat. Anybody there? Nope, nobody there in the chat. But I'll pull it out anyways. And go to screen share. And this is one that I'm just now reading about here. And his legislature is being sued over how it changed police deadly force law. Frequent ballot initiative promoter sued Washington state on Monday over the constitutionality suspect way lawmakers voted to make it easier to prosecute police for negligent shooting. Oh, my favorite. If you've listened to any of my older podcasts, you know I talked about Tim Eyman. Ah, Tim Eyman, what a great person. Some of the stuff he's tried to promote for great, some of it and most of it not so much. Tim Eyman filed a lawsuit in Thurston County Superior Court 4 days after lawmakers approved and Governor Jay Inslee signed a compromise measure backed by both activists and law enforcement groups. The agreement is intended to end years of wrangling over the existing state law that made it nearly impossible to hold officers criminally liable, meaning criminally liable in negligent shooting instances. Amid outrage over questionable police shootings, the organization De-Escalate Washington gathered nearly 360,000 signatures for an initiative to the legislature to change the law by eliminating a requirement that prosecutors prove an officer acted with malice. Under the state constitution, lawmakers can approve such measures as written, reject, or ignore them, in which case they appear in the November ballot, or propose an alternative to appear alongside the original on the ballot. In this case, the legislature crafted a fourth option. It passed the original, Initiative 940, as well as a law to amend it with changes called for by police groups and supported by activists. Mindful of the Constitution requirements for a public vote, however, the lawmakers also said the law to amend the initiative would only take effect if no referendum is filed by June to challenge it. Hyman argued that if it allowed to stand, the legislature's move would effectively abolish the people's right to petition the legislature by initiative. Voters could collect signatures for a measure only to see lawmakers drastically change it. Voters would then have to collect more signatures if they want to challenge the legislature's version by a referendum. Okay, I see his point here after reading this part of the article. Again, making an assumption based upon experience is not always the best thing if you just read a headline or your first few paragraphs of an article. Eat my own words, Jay. Anyways, yes, here in the state of Washington, we have the right to petition by initiative to our legislature. They are supposed to either approve, reject, or submit um, or basically submit their own idea and have it on the ballot next to the initiative in question. However, by doing this fourth option, by basically saying, here you go, we're approving your ballot, but we're also making these little changes over here to appease the police groups and other activists. In that way, it doesn't have to be voted on unless a referendum is made by June. It, I see his point. It does kind of make one of those situations where, how about you would have just said, okay, here's your original initiative. This is what we are planning on doing in the fourth option. We want to approve it, but we also want to tack on this. Let us vote on it. Because if option 4 converts back to option number 3, which is they propose their own idea, and option 3 says, we're going to approve the original, but we want to make these changes, I bet you many people would have voted for it. But again, without reading the actual initiative, which I'll read eventually. But I can see Tim Eyman's point here. However, I still just past experiences dealing with Eyman and reading into how he operated and how he operates does kind of make things a little cringy for me. Eyman has promoted about 20 initiatives over the years, many of them aimed at limiting taxes. He has asked the court to order the Secretary of State Kim Wyman to place both the original Initiative 940 and the amended House Bill 3003 on the fall ballot. The case is titled Eyman versus Wyman. Oh, God, that has got to be great. And it's set for April 20th. The hearing is set for April 20th. He Iman said in his lawsuit that the legislature went rogue, disrespecting the initiative petitioners signed and preventing voters from exercising their right to vote. Senator Jamie Peterson, a Seattle Democrat who supported the measure, said Monday he disagreed that the process has threatened the people's rights to propose initiatives to the legislature. It threatened the rights to threatens the people's right to propose initiatives. As a practical matter, he said the legislature could only act the way it did if an initiative sponsor supported the changes. Otherwise, there would be public outcry. Right. As a practical matter, he said the legislature could only act the way it did if an initiative sponsor supported the changes. Otherwise, there would be public. That makes no sense. As a practical matter, the legislature could only act the way it did by passing it and then making the changes to it if the initiative sponsors supported changes. But that's exactly what Iman wants. Not just the. Okay. Wow. Sorry, you guys haven't been seeing me here, but here I am back on camera. Okay. So I'm reading the sentence that the last sentence of the paragraph that I had at the top of my screen. So if you go back, pause after you hear this on this. As it as a practical matter, he said the legislature could only act the way that it did. Now, understanding the context of this is telling me that the only way the legislature could act the way it did, i.e., approve the initiative, make its amendments, is if the initiative sponsors supported the changes. Otherwise, there would be a public outcry. Okay, everybody else kind of see we did this action. We could only do this action if the initiative sponsors supported it. Otherwise, we have people like Tim Eyman crying over it. I don't, again, I haven't read this article, so I don't know if he's going to cover it, but wow, to me, that actually sounds like you just fell into Tim Eyman's trap. It's just basically saying exactly what he's saying is that you're overriding our ability to vote on a matter because, okay, moving on. Wow. Okay. So I got about 20 minutes. So again, I'm not trying to rush out of this, but I do have other engagements that I'm trying to get to. A little fun on St. Patrick's Day. If you know Say Strike and Movie Night, check it out. If you don't, check it out. It is adults only, though. And you missed me pointing my finger. Excuse me. Okay. Furthermore, and now I'm on to the next paragraph here. I was talking about this sentence right here. Whoops. Talking about this sentence right here. Okay, so I'm now over here. Furthermore, he said, once the legislature passes an initiative as written, it takes effect. Lawmakers can amend it in the normal manner. Unlike an initiative directly to the people, which cannot be amended for 2 years without two-thirds supermajority. Okay. It makes a little more sense. It does after reading that paragraph, but at the same time, it still seems a little wishy-washy to me. So, all right. We could have called a special session in June and amended I-94 after it went into effect, Peterson said. We can do it with a contingency. Can we do it with a contingency legislation? I think we should be able to, but it's fair to say that it's a novel question. We could have called a special session in June and amended I-94 after it went into effect. Okay. Wait. It just said up here, once the legislature passes an initiative as written, it takes effect. and it takes effect. I thought I was reading like it took immediate effect in my mind. No, and it takes effect. Lawmakers can amend it in the normal manner, unlike an initiative. Okay. So now what he's saying is that they could have waited until June, but why not amend it now? Okay. So so I guess yeah. So I guess the question of can they do it with contingency legislation, i.e., we're approving this, we're making these changes to it, but they're only going to go into effect if nobody questions the changes that we're making. Still starting to make sense, but it's still why push the envelope on something like this? I won't call it trivial because police shootings are never trivial, especially negligent ones. But at the same time, they could have waited because if there's one thing Washington State is famous for in the recent last couple decades is that they always go into special session, always. So you're going to be there anyways. Why not wait till then? But whatever. All right. So down to in 1971, the Attorney General's office issued a legal opinion saying that anytime the legislature made changes to an initiative proposed to it by the people, those changes must appear alongside the original on a ballot. The opinion also said the legislature couldn't simply pass a separate law altering the initiative, even to make simple corrections. Okay. Now this is I'm assuming the news article discussing this, but that brings up a pretty valid point. If we've gone, what are we now? 47 years now since the attorney general's issued this legal opinion, it makes sense why Tim Eyman, among probably others, are also going to be jumping in on this as well. But yeah, that is interesting. However, moving on, the constitutional concerns were aired during the rush to pass the deadly force compromise before the legislative session ended last Thursday. It passed with support from both parties in the House and from the majority Democrats in the Senate. Republican Senator Mike Patton of Spokane Valley and others said that they supported the underlying bill and were pleased the sides had compromised, but they described the process as an effort to ensure the Constitution didn't get in the way of a good policy. Okay, so we liked it, but we needed to make some changes. But overall, the whole thing was good and sound. So let's not worry about the Constitution of the state. Hmm, that's a slippery slope. I don't know about what you guys think. I don't know what Dave would think about it. I know he's more of a U.S. Constitution guy, but I'd be interested to see what he says about the state constitution kind of getting nudged out of the way here for this, but that'd be interesting. Let's see. This is a quote from Senator Joe Fain from Auburn, who is a Republican. I have incredibly grave concerns that we are creating a convoluted process for getting around a constitutional right. I agree. Attorney General Bob Ferguson's office said before the vote that it would defend the legislature's action in court if necessary. In an email, spokeswoman Breonna Aho, wonder if you're related to my friend in high school. Anyways, uh, spokeswoman Breonna Aho said the office would not discuss its analysis of whether it was constitutional. It's the end of the article. So, wonder what your thoughts are on that. State, kind of doing its thing, trying to get what seems like what seems like a great policy, a great initiative through the system. However, they went about it in a convoluted way. In the fact that they, again, kind of going back to what state supposed to do here. Okay, so under the state constitution, lawmakers can approve such measures as written, which means they would go into effect usually June 1st or July 1st, usually depending on how it's written, reject it or ignore them, in which case they will appear on the November ballot or a proposal to to propose an alternative to appear alongside the original on the ballot. Actually, it sounds more like a fifth option, but reject or ignore is kind of grouped together as one. So you have those three options, and then the state creates a fourth option. We're going to pass it, we're going to make changes, and if no objection is made via referendum by June, it goes into effect as we amended it. Well, that seems a bit seems a bit cringy to me. It seems a bit like they're walking on a slippery slope trying to miss the banana peels. If you've ever watched the Mythbusters episode with the banana peels, you would find that hilarious. Um, but I digress. We we as people have to hold our representatives accountable. Again, representatives accountable here. But at the same time, I do like that they are taking some initiative to kind of see how people, not just the initiative supporters, are the ones who gathered the signatures, but also those on that might be opposed to it. Because the the thing about the police is, yes, they are technically almost like a military asset at this point. They're trained in a lot of military tactics. They're given a lot of the same care that the military has, especially on the SWAT style teams. But at the same time, it's just they're not there to be Big Brother's eyes and ears. They are not without culpability. They're not without their responsibility to uphold the law as well as understand when and where they can use deadly force. As a Navy veteran, as somebody trained as topside sentry, petty officer of the deck, sail watch, below decks watch, nav watch, and nuclear weapons missile security guard, I'm I'm well aware of what deadly force is. Now, the verbiage has probably changed since I was last in 2004, but the underlying cause or use of deadly force is a threat, a serious threat or death to your body or those around you. Just because somebody moves in a way that you aren't expecting is not a reason to shoot them if you are a police officer. Now, yes, I understand. It's a split-second decision you have to make. I get that. I'm not saying that there aren't times where it's going to be like that, but if you are that jumpy, if you are that paranoid about everything around you, maybe being a police officer is not the right thing for you. You have to be diligent, you have to be aware of your surroundings, yes, but to the point of paranoia, that is a detriment to the police departments around not just Washington, around the country and around the world. We have to, as a society, move past the point of where we are fearing the police because of police brutality and wary of Big Brother spying on us over everything. And yes, some of it is deserved because we are being spied on. I get that. I'm not saying we're not. But when you give away, when you want more security, you have to go some of your freedoms. So just remember that old saying. If I remember correctly, it was Ben Franklin. Anyways, we have to look here locally at the state of Washington. How is this going to affect us? How is this going to affect us in the future if we allow this to go through? If the courts allow this to go through? I'm all for the state legislature approving a bill or an initiative without it having to necessarily go to us as voters. I'm a little hesitant on allowing them to amend things. This is where Tim Allen and I are going to actually agree on something. I don't know that it is necessarily in the best interest of the people for you, our legislature, our representatives, to move forward with an amendment without having us at least be able to hear about it, without having us to know about it. I mean, I haven't been watching the local news as of late on a regular basis. I do try to keep in touch with it, maybe not watch it all the time. But this is the first I've heard about this bill and this amendment, this amended change, and now the possible state constitutionality of it. So just remember, folks, keep an eye and ear out on your local politics. Watch how they're doing things, and call out when you think that they're doing it wrong. You can find out who your representatives are, both federally and locally. I believe on the same site. I will try to post that in the show notes on here when I find it. But honestly, hold your representatives accountable because they do work for you, not just the businesses that supported them, not just the donors that supported them. If you voted, they work for you. Now, I'm not saying that's just if you voted for them. If you vote and make your voice heard, they work for you, even if you didn't vote directly for that person. So it's time that we make our representatives understand that. And that goes across the country, folks, not just your state level, but your federal level as well. So this is Jay with Jay's Politics Podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach us at podcast99.org, or you can reach me directly at wow. You can reach me directly at jayspoliticspodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach me on Twitter at jpolypodcast. Thank you. Have a wonderful night. Enjoy your St. Patrick's Day. Do it responsibly. Don't be drinking and driving out there. That is the stupidest thing anybody can do. Well, short of sticking two metal knives in a socket, but don't drink and drive, people. It's St. Patrick's Day. I want you to be able to get up in the morning. And don't drink too much. Drink responsibly as well. Have your designated drivers. So, again, have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And don't forget the equinox is coming up.